Hello, good night. This is part 3 of our virtual reading for Crick Crack Monkey by Dr. Merle Hodge. We are doing chapter 8. Big School lived up to a great deal of our mixed expectations. Much of it was the purest exhilaration, like the feel of the crisp new copybook with the king's head on the outside and the neat pattern of blue and red lines on the inside, waiting to be overrun by the new scholarship. But there was so much we had not altogether bargained for. A teacher who was an individual who kept a sharp eye on you all the time, neither embroidering nor chatting with her mother, the menace to life and limb constituted by the presence of hordes of older children. Too much of big school, it seemed, was going to be sheer dismay. We sat in a kind of for there were children packed onto a raised platform, running around the edges of the cavernous hall that had a continuous wire netting along the tops of its wall, like lavatory windows letting in dusty light in a checkered pattern over our heads. The well was filled in with a bizarre patchwork of children in thick squares that were closely wedged together but facing different directions and reciting and buzzing in contradictory tempos. Morning assembly was an uncomplicated process. We merely stood up in our places and faced one end of the hall, and when it was over, we turned to our proper directions and sat down again. The whole school could never be got onto one floor, so Mr. Thomas held assembly upstairs, while Teacher Iris led the prayers downstairs. The problem of synchronizing the singing was given much thought and effort, but still, the upstairs assembly always managed to be a line or two behind us in the hymn, so that the total effect was something in the nature of an ecclesiastical rendition of Three Blind Mice. In the beginning, the thought of all those children were alarming. There was our multitude, the lowest classes down on the ground, as the others said with a certain contempt. We were surrounded by the condescending benches of bigger children ranged on the platform, and over our heads, every time the bell rang, was the most terrifying thunder of feet and furniture, reminding us that upstairs were just as many children, again as we could see around us, bigger and more condescending yet than the ones up on the platform. Big school was no place for little children. At recess time, the upstairs children materialized like dew, hurtling down the back and front stairs, which could barely contain the torrent. The whole building seemed to tremble. Outside, we clung to the walls and hovered in sheltered places for fear of being knocked down and trampled upon by the giants galloping about their yard. The four standpipes were permanently surrounded by a knot of viciously jostling children, so that there was almost no chance of us ever getting a drink of water. Sometimes a bigger brother or sister would push one of us through to the tap, but the younger children, as often as not, emerged in tears, disheveled and drenched. We had looked forward to playing on the savannah as being part and parcel of big school. Both EC and RC children played there, and prior to our promotion, how often, on our way to Mrs. Hines, we had lingered on the edge of the savannah, watching with envy the huge dancing, chanting rings, the long, thick skipping ropes, thrashing the ground, the pounding races in which you could run until you were tired. So much space was there. Now it was clear to us that, as yet, to venture onto the savannah at recess time would be suicide. The aspect of Santa Clara EC School, too, was decidedly less imposing than before. It had always been with certain thrill that we had regarded this bastion of learning in its two-storied splendor. square and solid and firmly planted on the ground. Now it had lost its awesomeness, for it too was plainly intimidated by all those murderous children who rode it like beasts, and battered its outside with stones, balls, sticks, fists, rotten fruits, and other hurtful objects. The walls of the school seem to have been painted a doubtful ochre at some epoch, government yellow, like the police station and the warden's office up in Kuriaka. Those who had cause to enter Mr. Thomas' office testified, at any rate, that the walls in there were of a different color, but the color of Santa Clara EC School was, on average, an intermediate shade between gray and khaki. Continue listening and following along every week for excerpts from Crick Crack Monkey by Dr. Merle Hodge. Thank you.